Welcome, everybody, to a new year, a new talk. I'm Michael Dalton. This is Bioenergy Healing. Our talk tonight is the power of authenticity, and we'll also go into things about activating your healing energies and the magic behind dreaming, like dreaming into being. So I've got a good talk planned for you tonight. And my goal with the talks is to inspire you, to uplift you, to expand you. I've been doing bioenergy healing for 30 years, and it's been a real gift and an honor to witness people go through transformation and healing and all the magical things that they go through in the name of everything from recovering to illness to just wanting to open their consciousness. And so these talks are to inspire you, and I hope that you can take something away from them and feel somewhat inspired, somewhat uplifted. And sometimes we don't often have to make big changes in our life. Sometimes we just need to shift our way of thinking, being without a certain thought can create a whole different reality for ourselves. And so sometimes it's just uprooting a thought that is sabotaging us or a way of being that leads to a negative habit. And so I wanted to unravel it tonight really by sharing, like, one of the things that I teach in the bioenergy is collectively. So I'm just adding people here as we chat. So collectively, obviously, we have our 7 major chakras of the body: the root chakra, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart chakra, the throat chakra, the brow chakra, the crown chakra. We have these beautiful energy fields out around our body, and they're interacting. We're all interacting with each other energetically as well as physically. And part of the process of the chakra system is that the lower 3 chakras, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, they all develop unconsciously. So there isn't anything you have to do. They just develop and they open up by themselves. But when we get to the heart chakra, the energy point in the middle of the chakra system, we have to actually consciously do the work. We have to consciously go in and get out of the way of our basically the solar plexus, which is the wounds that we build up inside ourselves. And so as we start to dissolve and remove the wounds that we store on an unconscious level, that frees up the energy for the energy to continue to rise and open up through the body. And so I've taught for a long time that collectively we've been shifting from the solar plexus into the heart chakra, which is a really beautiful journey, because the solar plexus is it's your power center, it's your fire center, it's you standing up for yourself, speaking out for yourself, and very much your authenticity as well. But it's like, as we shift into the heart is the heart is the loving center, it's the love and connection to love and being able to feel love. And then the next chakra that opens up is the throat chakra. And the reason why this is important is because I think that this year we're going to feel the throat chakra very featured. I feel like it's been building up, and like everything has a turn, everything has a timing, right? Like a timing, like energy moves in waves and rhythms and patterns and cycles. So just like the new year is a new cycle of energy, also the seasons are cycles, the oceans are cycles, the moon is cycles, right? So everything moves in patterns, waves, rhythms, and cycles. And the cycle that we're in now, that we've been in for the last couple of years, but is becoming more and more apparent, is the awakening and the opening up of the throat chakra. And I think the throat chakra is very significant because on the basic level, it's communication, it's creativity, and it's expression. But at a much deeper level, it's about authenticity. And I feel like that's going to be really a theme for us as we move through 2024 and 2025. A theme insofar as one of the things that I've noticed, like say for people with sessions, working with people, is that it's been getting harder and harder for people to do the things that don't resonate with them. Does that make sense? Like that so many people have shifted from jobs to home to work to relationships to where they're living. And it's like where maybe in the past you would have put up with things, it's getting harder and harder to put up with things that you're not vibing with. Like in energy, we call it the vibe, right? Like you're vibing with some things and you're not vibing with other things. And you could be vibing with something and you could be perfectly vibing with it like last year, but no longer able to vibe with it this year, you know? So you could be working in a job as an example, and you love the job and everything is going well. And then your energy starts to shift and change, and you no longer vibe with that job anymore. And basically what's happening on an energetic level is your capacity to hold energy is increasing. So people talk about, I'd like to raise my vibration, well, that's literally what's happening, but there's a consequence to raising your vibration. It means that the things that don't resonate with you have to kind of vibrate out of your life, because you're creating space for new things to vibrate in. So it's like it sounds very like easy and flowing, but I sometimes describe it more like the caterpillar, right? Like it's the caterpillar goes to the butterfly, but it's not this easy transition. There's a lot of goop in the middle, And so we've been in the goop for a long time. We could almost say 4 years in the goop, And you could go, another name for it could be the dark night of the soul. I don't think it's a night. I think it's probably a couple of years, really, for most people who are in their journey of awakening or opening up or becoming more consciously aware of the role that they're playing, at least in their own life, if not in the lives of others. Right? So one could say that there's an acceleration happening through the chakra system, an acceleration of energy, more energy opening up, more of the, I think you may recognize if I said like that, things of the past have maybe resurfaced for you. So in the last couple of years, a lot of issues that were in your tissues they've had an opportunity to get purged out of your body. Old patterns, conditioning, programming, resurfacing. And one of the reasons for that is as we step more into authenticity, as we come more into the throat chakra, more into truth, things get more polarized, right? And I think you've seen that, right? You've seen the world can feel very polarized. But that's what happens as we move more into authenticity, because if we're only pleasing other people all the time, like, yeah, everybody's happy, but you're not being real, you're not being authentic. So if you're doing the people pleasing and you're not being authentic, everybody will love you, everybody will like you, right? But the more authentic you become, you actually create more polarization, because the people who are not being authentic will feel uncomfortable. Does that make sense? So as one might say, as you raise your vibration, it will create more contrast for those who are not raising their vibration or doing their, I think a good name for it is your inner work, right? We have the work that we do on the outside, you have your work and your job and your interactions with everybody, but also on a conscious level, as conscious beings, we often, there's a journey that we're taking inside ourselves, the inner journey, the inner work. When you're doing healing, when you're going to workshops, courses, reading books, you're doing inner work. When you're meditating, you're doing inner work. When you're doing yoga, you're doing inner work, It's like, so there's the inner work and there's the outer work. And the outer work is really what we're you know, what is seen by other people, but the inner work is often a lot of times what we're doing in silence, what we're doing, the work that we're doing on ourselves. So as we start to, I would say, like, I've even seen, like, even people that I trained in bioenergy years ago, I found, like, in the last year or two, people coming back and saying, I stopped practicing for a while, but I'm really ready now to go back into it. It's like everything comes back around in a like a cycle of energy, right? Sorry, just adding somebody here. Let me just have my drink of water here. This is a hydrogenated water. So, or hydrogen water, so it's hydrogenated. Don't worry, I'm not selling them. It's just nice to drink. Okay, so as we're doing our inner work, you know, a lot of the work that one is doing in healing is a large percentage of it is the lower three chakras, because they're the unconscious chakras. That's where we store all the patterns and conditioning, the programming, but especially the wounding, any trauma, and it doesn't even have to be trauma. Like that sounds a very strong word, but just like emotional baggage, right? Like we can carry so much emotional baggage. And one of the things I've always taught people is that I don't think anybody punishes us as much as we punish ourselves. Nobody is as hard on us as we are on ourselves. And you know, I think in the past, you would have got away with that. You could keep it to yourself, right? But I feel like with the shifting energies, the raising energies, I think it's even getting harder and harder um, for you to keep your wounding inside. It's like things are being exposed, that you're being pushed to into the polarity. You're being pushed to expose your wounds, to release your wounds, to heal your wounds, to confront your wounds, if nothing else, you know. And so but what I love is, like, you know, when you see people drop their wounds, when you see people heal the past, you know, they move into more freedom. And I think that's so important for us as a collective, to move into more freedom and more liberation. And I think it's really the inner the desire of not just the heart, but our true selves, our authentic selves, is to be free, is to be liberated. And as much as we want to change the outside world in order to feel that way, I would say the truth of it is that, how do we find freedom and liberation without changing anything outside of ourselves? Because otherwise you're always going to be trying, there'll always be something to fix, there'll always be something to change. And so, you know, people would say to me, well, if my life was more peaceful, then I wouldn't be sick. And I'd be thinking, well, if you could find more peace inside, maybe you wouldn't be sick. You know, and what I found was that if you could get people to take a little bit of that attention away from the outer world and bring it back into the inner world, and start to take some ownership of the thoughts and feelings and the happenings that are taking place inside of us. And if we do that inner work, what I found is that the quality of our life goes up. And as that quality of our life goes up, illness and sickness goes down. And if you were to sum that up in a way, I really think it's helping people come back into authenticity. It's helping people come into alignment. I might even have a pendulum here, actually. But I often describe it like the pendulum, and I'll show it to you again, even if you've seen it before, because I think sometimes you got to see things a few times for them really to anchor in or to sink in. But if we take the pendulum, right, the pendulum is floating, and, you know, we can move it off center. So we can push it off center, you know, or we can pull it off center, right? So we can pull or push the pendulum off center. But really, the pendulum doesn't take anything to come back to its center, right? And so to me, like, that's what healing is. Healing is really just helping people to come back to their center. Their authentic true self is already inside them, waiting for them to return and to get the blockages out of the way, to get the congestion and all the bullshit that we fill ourselves up with, all the, you know, all the pain, all the suffering that we, and I'll be blunt here, that we do unto ourselves. And I'm not saying that other people don't do it to you, you know, but I don't think other people do it to us as much as we do it to ourselves. So you might not be able to change what other people do. I mean, obviously you can create good and healthy boundaries, but I think that the real work is healing the perspectives that we put on ourselves, healing the way that we perceive ourselves and the way in which we take responsibility and charge for our lives. So whereas like the solar plexus chakra was like stepping into our power, I would say like really the gift of the solar plexus is that as we step into our power and into our fire energy, we start to create more self-worth, self-value. And I think that's so important, especially when it comes to healing, because like, how can you heal yourself if you don't have value in yourself, right? Because you could, if you don't believe that you're good enough, then maybe being sick is helping, like is matching that vibration, right? So you could be going to doctors and specialists and all these different people and doing all the work, and you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do. But if your self-worth is down here, I feel like you're going to keep creating events where there's always going to be something missing. You're never quite getting to that place where you're returning back to health and well-being. Whereas when our self-worth comes up, our vibrational body changes. So the electromagnetic field of the body starts to change. And as our value in ourselves starts to change, the receptors in the cells get a new message. They get a different communication. So it's kind of like a broadcast. You're always broadcasting, whether you realize it or not. And this is why our thoughts and feelings are so important, because your thoughts are an electrical charge and your feelings are a magnetic charge. So you've got electromagnetic broadcasting and charges happening in the body. And then on the physical level in your body is receiving those electrical and magnetic impulses and is changing the body based on those impulses that it's receiving. And like it goes down a deep rabbit hole when you realize that your whole body is changing moment to moment to moment, just like you're breathing. You know, you're not breathing from the past, right? And you're also not breathing from the future. But when you get a diagnosis, you could get a diagnosis, and the diagnosis is like taking a photograph of the ocean. You know, it's not the ocean itself. It's just an image, a moment in time. But the ocean is, you know, it can't really be captured in a photograph. And I think the same for the human being, the human spirit. You can't capture what we are in a diagnosis, in an idea that you have about yourself, in a fragment, right? Like in a piece. We're so much more than that. We're so much more than just the physical body or just the mind, or, you know, it's not that we have consciousness in the body, but it's that everything exists within consciousness. And as we start to open up that we are consciousness and everything exists within that consciousness, then the limits, it starts to open and expand in a whole lot of new ways. And yeah, it gets very exciting the more you start to look at the body from that quantum mechanical world versus the old, more biological way, or the physics of the body. Whereas when you start to look at it in the quantum way, um, right down as small as the little strings, but even to the point of the cells, where the cells are waves, they can be a wave or a particle. So the electrons that are moving through your body, they can be both a wave or a particle. And the wave is the potential to become something. And the particle is that realized thought. So even as we change our thoughts, we change how the electrons interact and interface with the body. That's why when we say you are what you think, there's a lot of truth in that, because you become what you're thinking about all day long. And whereas maybe for a long time you got away with like beating yourself up, I think that it's getting harder and harder to even do that. Whereas now you might find like you might not allow someone else to mistreat you. I think that we're in the next stage of our development where you're not going to allow yourself to mistreat you anymore. And I think that's a wonderful I think that's a wonderful arrival point in this time in history where collectively we're all moving together in a new kind of energetic pathway. So whereas the solar plexus was that us stepping into our power, finding our self-worth, and then we said the heart chakra is about love, it's like we move into love, like not just love for others, but if we don't have that self-worth, you're going to be trying to get love from other people in order to feel enough. Does that make sense? And that's not an uncommon thing, right? In relationships, people go from one relationship to another and they're like, "Oh, you're not treating me properly, or you're not treating me the way I want to be treated." But I think that the real truth of that, after working with tens of thousands of people over 30 years of healing, is that when people do the inner work and you start to find that self-worth and self-love for yourself rather than waiting to get it from another person, that's you coming back into authenticity. That's you coming back into alignment, right? You're not reliant upon the other person for love because you have that self-love, because you're enough, right? And, people say like to another person, "Oh, you complete me." Well, I think in some ways we have to complete ourselves, right? But it's like when we complete ourselves, then it's very easy for other people to love us. It's very easy for us to receive love from another person. But if you're not doing your self work, your inner work, like no amount of love that another person gives you is going to fill the void that you have inside. Boom, right? Boom, folks. Need another sip of water after that one. Got to cool down. Got to cool down after that. Whew. So that's why, like I always say, when we're working on the energy system, the reason we're working on the bioenergy system, not just because it's really the access point to healing physical ailments in the body, but it's really understanding that when the energy is blocked on the inside, it really doesn't matter what you're getting from the outside. It'll never be enough. It'll never be right. It'll never match up to your expectations. Because if you're wounded on the inside, those expectations are not authentic. They're not in alignment. They're in wounding. And so you can never meet them at the level at which they want to be met, right? Because it's a wound. So as we're doing the work and we're unraveling the wounds and getting the wounds out of the way, I always say, like, it actually becomes really simple. That's what I love about authenticity. It becomes really simple. There's actually very little that we need, you know. I think what we need most is getting out of the way, getting the blocks out of the way, getting the old version of ourselves out of the way, the conditioning, the programming out of the way, the wounding out of the way. But there's not a lot that you need to feel peace inside yourself. It's more about getting the stuff out of the way of feeling what is already there. It's not something you have to accomplish, right? You don't accomplish peace. It's just a happening, you know. You don't accomplish love. Like the misunderstanding with love is like, well, if I gave you love, why are you not giving me love at the same level that I gave it to you, right? I gave you love, you should be giving me back love. So it's like when we come back into alignment with the chakra system, with the energy system, with this awakening process of the energy of our spirit through our beingness, you give love not because it's not to get something back, but it's just simply because that's who you are, because that's the resonance, that's your frequency, that's your vibration, that's your capacity. So you have a capacity to hold love, and then love like expands out from you. So it's not that you're giving it, it naturally expands from you because that's your natural state. And it's really simple, folks, you know, it's really simple. So we get these moments, of course, where you might feel that, where you just feel like, you know, there's things that are effortless. And I think that the more we're in authenticity, things are effortless. But the more we're pushing and pulling, it's like, you know, it's kind of like you're trying to push the pendulum, the ball up the hill, you know, and it's only a matter of time before it comes swinging back in the other direction, right? So it's like as we find that center and we find the alignment, and that's what I found in healing, that when people do the healing and they find their center, it's like you're returning back to a truer version of yourself. And without all the stuff, that truer version of yourself is just there. It's, you don't make it. It's not something that you make. It's a higher vibrational frequency that you're allowing the cells of your body to receive because they're not clogged up. So the cells of your body can't receive as an example, the frequency of love if they're clogged up with like sadness and grief and anger and fear and guilt, you know. So if your cells are clogged up, that's what we say you know, the wounds clog themselves up in the cells of your body as a cellular memory. And so even though your circumstances change, if the cells are still clogged up, you'll recreate the same kind of happening over and over again. I hope that's beginning to make sense. It's quite a big topic to unravel in an hour, but we'll do our best. So I think too, like as we're finding that authentic self, you know, some people might find that, you know, here's the thing that I found with clients, like sometimes they'll say like that they're taking some space with their family or with friends or people that they know. And there's always this sense of like there's something wrong if you're taking space. And I think that sometimes distance is the best thing if you're being disrespected. You know, it's part of having healthy boundaries, right? And so there's the myth of like, oh, you should get on with everybody. I think the more authentic we become, you're not going to be pleasing everyone all the time, right? Like, and right, you're not going to be pleasing everyone all the time. The more authentic you become, and sometimes you might need distance. And I think that in the last 4 years, you know, as I've observed for a lot of clients and students, that the last 4 years has given people a lot of space to one, step into their authenticity, and then and that space to decide if they want to be around certain people or not, you know, and that sometimes that distance or that space, it's like allows you to step out and to see where maybe you've been um, mistreated or been communicated in unhealthy ways. And it's only when you step out of a situation that you get to see it. It's like if you have someone, even in a relationship, if you had someone who's communicating to you in a very negative way, you could just get used to it. So it becomes normalized for you. And then someone else overhears your partner talking to you, and they're like, they're being really disrespectful. And you're like, oh, no, no, that's just how they communicate. And you're like, yes, that's really disrespectful, you know. And sometimes people don't recognize the patterns that they're in or the wounds that they're in because it has become so normalized. So, you know, in that sense of like when people have time away from a situation or people or jobs or things, you start to like identify what are your values and what do you value more. And so I think that has definitely been a theme, you know, in these past couple of years, and I feel it getting stronger and stronger. And I think this year we're going to see authenticity featured many times. I feel it's going to come up for everybody more and more as the energies continue to rise, and as they're rising, they're pushing out all of the debris, all of the wounds and the debris and the old ways of being. And in some ways we're releasing and we're letting go of the old version of ourselves, right? You know, we're releasing the old version of ourselves, the versions that put up with things that weren't acceptable, that um that not just what other people are doing, but things that we're doing to ourselves, right? So whether that's bad habits or negative thinking, negative communicating to ourselves, I think you'll find like as we collectively shift more into throat chakra, you'll catch yourself more and more when you speak negatively about to yourself, and you'll hold yourself more accountable. You know, it's like you can't hide it anymore. You can't get away with it just happening unconsciously. It's time is here. Let's put it that way. It's like it's time is blossoming. You know, authenticity is blossoming, and with that comes healthier communication, more creativity, and more beautiful expressions, you know. But while we're going through that, there's also the polarization, which like on one level, it might seem like things are getting worse in the world, but it's not so much that things are getting worse, it's just that all the shit is at the surface, right? You know, and so it's the things that have been happening in the world have always been happening. It's just that things are more exposed now. So in the same way, like you could be communicating to yourself in a negative way, maybe before you were doing it unconsciously, and now you start to notice, oh yeah, I am speaking in a negative way against myself, or you know, yeah, no one said that to me. I'm saying that to me. I'm making that shit up in my mind, right? Like, and so I feel like this is a transition that we're in. And I think that polarity, that polarization, it also in an interesting way, I think this past few years kind of pushes people into their tribes, right? So I always think like negative people will always find more people to be negative with. You know, people who are sad all the time will find lots of people to be sad with. You know, people who are angry at everything will find other people who are angry all the time. You know, that's the tribes. Everybody finds their tribes, you know. But as you have to then be aware of, well, as you start to raise your vibration or uplift your consciousness or open up out of the old places, the old versions of yourself, then you're starting to tune in, or like a tuning fork, you're starting to attract people who now start to resonate in a more similar way, where you after you've been together, you feel good. You're not feeling drained. You're not feeling worn out. You're feeling more elevated. And so we call these the luminary cells. So as luminary cells find each other, you start to uplift each other. You start to resonate. You start to come together. And so I think in some ways, maybe just as I always say, just like the breathing, when you breathe, you're always breathing out and breathing in. There's like a dual effect that takes place. So on one level, we're always letting go of stuff at the same time that we're always inviting stuff in. So there's a duality in that as well, right? The duality of breathing in and out, life and death in every breath. And as we're breathing in new life into the cells of the body. And as we're breathing out the old version of ourselves. We're breathing out the past. And this is why I think inner work is so important, because if you're not doing your inner work, then you're recycling the past back into the cells of your body. You're recycling the old negative thinking, the old negative ways of being, and you're doing it unconsciously. And so then this keeps you in a kind of a trapped process. And then I think that for a lot of people, when they're not doing that work, the illness is often really, illness can be a beautiful thing. It's your body crying out to you for attention. Like what a child does when you're not giving them attention, they start screaming, hello, hello, it's like kids will, like, they'll do something to get attention. Well, I think your body kind of works in the same way. After 30 years of doing healing, I think your body works in a very similar way. When you're ignoring your body starts to vibrate, it starts to ache, it starts to pain, it starts to suffer, and it starts to let you know. It's letting you know, hey, everything here is not okay. That there's things that are not flowing, that there's things out of alignment. And one of the big things I used to see was, like, when people are in jobs that they don't want to be in, and their body would eventually get sick. And then they'd say, well, as soon as I get better, I'm going to go back to the job. And then I would find, like, that, their body doesn't want to get better. Why? Well, because they're going to go back to the job that they don't want to do. And when they realize that, when they come into that realization, that consciousness of, actually don't want to go back to that, that's the past. I have to transition to something more creative, something more expressive, something that's a different frequency that is being called into my life, that I'm saying at a deep level that I want, but I'm not matching up to it authentically. Then my body is going to let me know through illness and sickness. It's going to vibrate and resonate out of balance until I bring attention to it, until I begin to fix it. And then the moment I bring consciousness into that space and I transition to doing more of what it is that I want to do, I'm not kidding, but illness and sickness often just disappears. It's just like, boom, it dissipates almost as if it wasn't even there. That's the power of us coming into alignment and following the heart, following our voice, what is wanting to be spoken into our reality. So that's the first part, is the power of authenticity. More water time. The second part I'd call is, like, activate your healing energies. I think activate your energies is because at the end of the day, we are energy. Everybody is energy, Everything is energy. Everybody is energy. We're just energy at different frequencies, vibrations. But everything is energy, and everything is flowing and moving and vibrating and resonating. And your energy is working whether you realize it or not. You know, even if you don't believe it, it's still there. You know, it's kind of like you could be like in a similar way, like you're breathing, right? Like you don't have to breathe consciously, in fairness, right? Like if you were only to breathe consciously, you'd be dead, because you wouldn't have time, right? Like, oh, I don't have time to do breathing today, maybe tomorrow. No, I don't have time tomorrow, maybe the next day. So like if breathing was up to you, you'd be dead. So breathing is an unconscious process. You can even fall asleep. You never think when you fall asleep, what happens if I stop breathing? No, you trust that it's a happening, right? You don't have to do anything to make breathing happen. It's a happening, right? It just happens. In a similar way, your energy flows and moves through your body. It's a happening. It's not anything you have to do. It's a happening, you know. But here's the difference. Just like with your breathing, when you deliberately and consciously breathe, when you take time to consciously breathe, you can do magic with the body. You can activate a whole lot of magical functions in the body, like in a very simple way, just simply by slowing your breathing down, lengthening and deepening your breath. You can switch your nervous system from a sympathetic state into a parasympathetic state, just by slowing your breathing down and regulating your breathing. Just by doing that consciously, by consciously thinking about your breathing, slowing it down, you can alter your nervous system. You can take yourself out of the fight or flight response, which is that sympathetic state. And in fairness, most people are living in that state and living in it unconsciously. So it has become so normalized that people don't even know that they're living in it. It's a form of low level stress. But you notice how, like, I would say, like, the consequence of living in a more sympathetic state is that you have a lot of people reach these points where they get like adrenal fatigue. So that's because when you're in a fight or flight response, you're pumping your adrenaline into your body, and so you can reach adrenal fatigue. So even though you're not doing it deliberately, but low level stress and not resetting your nervous system is enough for you to drain out your system. And in a similar way, that affects your immune system. So, you know, everybody has a powerful immune system. I know no one has really been speaking about it for the past 4 years, but I like to promote the idea that we have an immune system, just to remind you, in case you've forgotten, you know, because in some ways people think you can get an immune system through an injection. I like to think that your natural immunity is the most powerful thing that you have. And it's real, it's authentic, it's your authentic you, your natural immunity. There's nothing like it. It's what has kept human beings alive for a long time. And we have that natural immunity inside us, and our breathing affects that immunity, and our emotions affect that immunity. So just as we can go from unconscious breathing and activate conscious breathing and affect the systems of the body, in a similar way, we can activate the healing energies in our body. If we do nothing, as an example, if we learn nothing about the chakra system and learn nothing about the body's healing, I think in many ways the body will still heal itself. Like, the body is friggin' amazing. Your body is designed to heal itself, right? You say you hurt your back. Well, it's not uncommon that with time people heal their back. It's just that sometimes it doesn't heal, right? Like sometimes people get a back injury or an accident and it doesn't heal. And in those cases, sometimes you need some help, you need some support to get your body healing itself. It's not that your body can't heal itself, it's just that it's not healing itself. And like I said, it's not that you don't have an immune system, It's just that for a lot of people, it's not working, right? So it's always about getting your systems, your natural systems of your body working, the ecosystem of your body. You know, people talk a lot about the ecosystem of the world. Well, it begins with your body, right? Like your body is part of the world. The elements are inside of you, earth, water, fire, air. When those elements are in harmony, your ecosystem comes into harmony. Your immune system is activated. Your nervous system balances itself out in a beautiful oscillating current of the sympathetic, the parasympathetic. Your body is doing what it's supposed to do when the ecosystem is working well. So that ecosystem is a combination of the body, the mind, the spirit. That's why we call it holistic health. It's the whole system, body, mind, and spirit. So if we're only looking at the outer, which is the physical body, we say that's the effect. And so if you're only taking care of the outer body, you know, the effects, you know, and you're not getting to the cause, you're going to be repeating the same patterns over and over. And we say that's a definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So in terms of like activating your healing energies, well, there's lots of ways of doing that. In my work, I teach people through courses how to work with their energy system, how to work with their chakras. I would say my slogan is put your health back in your hands, right? Like put your health back in your hands. And I think that's really the simplicity to come back to, is that we are all natural healers. I'm not the seventh son of a great uncle of a nice grandfather, you know. It's a technology that's inside of us, a natural healing technology, not something that you're going to learn in our education system, you know. It's something that you will have to like actively search out, seek after, right? To learn healing, to, you know, unless you've grown up in a culture that is more connected with the ecosystem of the earth, then, you know, then learning about your natural energy and the energy of animals and your interaction between yourself and nature comes with that. But for most of us, you don't learn about the full ecosystem. It's everything is divided, everything is separated. You know, people go to psychotherapist or a psychologist and they're focused on the head, and they're going to the doctor and they're focused on the body or the chemical system, and the chiropractor's focused on the back, and you know, it's everything is separate. When we come back to the energy, you realize that there's a whole ecosystem of energy that moves and flows and circulates throughout your body. And as you start to activate this energy, as you start to activate your own hands to move and direct and work that energy, and learning how to use your breathing to move energy. So you can move energy in 3 different ways: with your mind, with your breathing, and with your hands. And when you combine all those 3 together, you have an incredible way to activate those energies that you have available to you. And like I said, it's not that we don't have the energy available to us, is that just a lot of times people never learn how to use it. They never learn how to use their own energy to heal themselves. And if we don't learn how to use our energy to heal ourselves, then we're kind of more destined to look outside ourselves. And I've often said, like, you know, in terms of healing, it's like we're always looking outside for permission, right? Like people need permission to cross the street. They need permission to park their car nowadays. And if you go to the doctor, you need permission to get better. You know, people are looking to the doctor to give them permission to get well. I don't know. I'm a firm believer. What if you were to give yourself permission to get better? What if you were to make a decision? What if you were to dream into being? What if you were to decide, I'm going to get well? You know, the method or the process I found, like certainly in bioenergy, is getting people out of the way of themselves. But the process, when a person sees themselves healthy, sees themselves well, and they start to direct their energy towards what they want as opposed to what they don't want. When they start giving themselves permission, everything changes. The dreams, in one level, we're dreaming unconsciously. In another level, we're consciously dreaming. We're dreaming reality into being. We're casting spells through the words that we speak, through the thoughts that we're having. And this is why I say, like, when you become more conscious that your thoughts and your words are creating your reality, you become much more conscious about what you're speaking to, and you're going to be less likely to speak in a negative way against yourself. But the biggest thing is that people don't know what they don't know, right? And that's where like, if you can help people see their patterns, if you can help people unravel their wounds, if you can help people get out of their own way, then I find that people are more than willing to improve their life. It's not that people don't want, it's not that people want to be sick, right? It's not that people want to be in an unhappy relationship. It's not that people want to be stuck in a job for the money. It's just simply that people get stuck in these patterns, and the patterns are unconscious. And as much as you want to get out, you keep falling back into the old patterns. And so clearing out your chakra system, clearing out your energy field, understanding the process of the mind, the breath, and the body, and using your hands for healing, whether you're using that on yourself or you're doing it for other people, there's a real beautiful gift in it, because you're bringing another version of the person into the forefront, right? And so that's why I think, like, there's a version of people that is free and liberated. There's a version of you that is free and liberated. There's a version of you that is healthy and well. There's a version of you that is full of energy and vibrancy. There's a version of you that is loving and passionate and kind. And there's a lot of other versions as well. We won't go into those. But there's versions of you that you might not be tapping into because of all the baggage that we accumulate. And so as we start to want, I think, even acknowledge that there's other versions of ourselves that are wanting to come alive in us. And I think that's a great question. What is wanting to come alive in me, right? Because if we're not starting to bring our awareness into opening up to the present moment and what wants to come into the present, then we're destined to repeat the past. And I call that autopilot. So when we're on autopilot, we're living in a more unconscious way. But as we start to take ourselves off that autopilot and we start to interrupt the process of automation, it's like you can see it even like with people nowadays, like people on their phones, right? Like, I think I walked by a restaurant the other day and I looked in the window and everybody was on their phone, and it's just like, it's, in some ways it's disheartening, but it's like, okay, well, that's how things are. But it's like, not only are people not connecting with each other, they're not connecting with themselves anymore, and so just as technology advances, and technology is wonderful, right? Like, we can't fault it. Technology is amazing, but we can also get consumed by it. Technology should be to free us up. It should free up our time. It should free up our time and our space and our finances. It should free up so that we can have more creativity, more expression, more communication. But in some ways, your phone can, yeah, like my family's in Ireland and the phone can connect me to people who are further away, but sometimes it disconnects you from people who are close to you, right? So there's a truth in that as well, right? Like that, you know, I have this kind of, I won't say I stick with it. I'll be authentic and say I won't stick with it, but like I have this kind of idea, at least, that when you're with real people, put your phone away. I don't know. I think it's a nice idea, right? Like when you're with real people, put your phone away. When you're sitting at a table with someone and your phone is out on the table, you're kind of telling them that the phone is more important than your conversation with them, right? Like put your phone away, turn it off, right? And and it's like this next generation of kids, they're not going to be able to make eye contact. They're not going to be able to connect and have empathy for each other if there isn't some sort of like return to that natural ecosystem. That so just as technology advances, we also have to bring forth the inner technology, the inner nature of who we are. They need to be in balance, right? Because if they go too far out of balance, then just like the pendulum, whenever anything goes too far one way or the other, it'll come crashing back down, you know? So just as like the world is going through this phenomenal transformation, you could say right now, it's one could say a new world emerging has to be one that is more in alignment, one that's more authentic, one that is more balanced. Otherwise, we're just repeating the same patterns and we're destined to come crashing down again. Sorry, I'm dropping a whole load of stuff on you, but I hope that you're finding it interesting and you're getting some nuggets in there. So in terms, I'm going to wrap it up now, but in terms of like what I wanted to share through this talk tonight was as we start to shift into this more authentic place, we start to find alignment with who we are. And the image that we have of ourselves is so important because, you know, one of the things I always teach in my courses is that a person cannot move past the image that they have of themselves. You can't move past the image that you have of yourself because you don't have the capacity for your nervous system to hold. Like when we talk about raising your vibration, it all sounds well and good, like very, oh, raise your energy, open your chakras, you know, it sounds very spiritual. But there's a real life experience to it. It really breaks down to the capacity that your nervous system has to hold frequency, to hold energy. And you can't create a reality that you're not emotionally comfortable with. So you could have an idea of being healthy and well, but if you're not emotionally comfortable with what that will bring into your life, you'll keep sabotaging yourself from getting better. Boom. You know, you could have an idea that, oh, I wouldn't mind having, you know, a better job or a different house or living somewhere else or whatever it might be, even if it's more friends, whatever. People always say, like when I ask people what people really want to want, I really want to connect, you know, want to connect with more people at a deeper level. I think that's a real thing that us as human beings, I think that's the heart chakra. We want connection, right? Like I said, life is very simple. We want real connections. At the same time, the more we're moving away from connection with ourselves, it's inauthentic to think that we're going to get deeper connections with other people, right? So until we return and we're doing the inner work and we're taking the time and the space and we're putting the effort in, it like the thing with the lower chakras is you don't have to do anything for the lower chakras. They're the unconscious chakras. But in order to develop the upper chakras, in order to come into authenticity, you have to do the work. You have to earn it. You know, I know that doesn't sound very nice. You may not want to hear that. You might think, well, I was hoping that the whole spiritual awakening would happen by itself. And to some degrees, you can get you can get the opportunity for awakening, but no one does the work for you, right? You can get an opportunity, like you can come to me for healing, you get the opportunity for healing, but there's still work that needs to be done. You can say, well, you know, I want to learn about healing. Well, yeah, I can offer you a training course. That's an opportunity, right? I can get, you could say, dear God, universe, you know, teach me about healing. And then God, the universe, puts me on your radar, and, you know, it's given you the opportunity, but it's not doing the work for you. You still have to go and learn. You still have to put the effort in. You still have to participate, you know, in the journey. It's like the journey's not done for you. And so I think that's the thing, when people start to realize that as you radically shift from expecting or wanting it to be done for you, and you start to participate in your whole own healing journey, and you start to give yourself permission to raise your vibration, to improve the quality of your life, to be in a happy, loving relationship, to do work that you love to do. When you start giving yourself permission, you start raising your capacity to hold that frequency. That's you doing the work, you know? And the reason why something isn't in your life right now that you want is because you're not in vibrational harmony or vibrational frequency with it, right? Otherwise, you're already be lined up to it. So everything that we want is like energetically, we get given the opportunity to bring what we want into fruition, but it doesn't happen without the earning it, because it's the earning it that is the growth that we go through that raises our vibration to bring us into harmony with what it is that we say that we want. Boom. That was a big mouthful. That was the Blarney Stone all downloaded to you. So in terms of like finishing with like this idea of dreaming, I think that as human beings that we're powerful, beautiful, spiritual beings, non-local, beyond time, beyond space, we're all of this concentrated and squashed down into a physical body, you know, and it's like we have all of this energy, and we're like, it's all concentrated down into a physical body, and we start to take on roles and shapes and patterns, and then we start to believe that this is all that we are. And folks, nothing could be further from the truth. We're beautiful, powerful spiritual beings. And I think that, like, as I said, this year, 2024, I think that there's an opportunity to really discover more of who you are. And the more you resist it, the louder it will get. But the more you embrace it, I think the easier it gets. When we move towards something, it gets easier. When we move away from something, it follows us. It just comes around again. You know, that's why people always say to me, Michael, well, this thing keeps happening again and again and again. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens, because everything moves in waves and rhythms and patterns and cycles. So everything comes around again. And the difference is, if you're at the same vibration when it came around before, now you're in the pattern. But if you're doing the work and you raise your vibration, when that thing comes around, it no longer has any effect on you. So like I always say to people, like one good way that you know that you're doing the work is, you know, after people have done some healing sessions or they've done some courses, they'll say, you know, something that used to really upset me happened during the week and it didn't upset me. You know, things that people like, normally if someone said that to me, it would have really triggered me. And I'm not as triggered anymore. And I always think that's a really good sign that you're doing your work. You're doing your inner work when the things are not triggering you as much, you know. Now, if you're getting triggered, that's also there's a great opportunity for healing right there, because it means you don't have to go looking for your wounds. they're coming around at the same, you're in the same vibration and they're coming around, they're always going to come back around. There's no escape. The only way is up, right? Or a better way of saying it is you have to go in order to get out, right? So I think that there's a version of us that is free and that is liberated and that is awakening inside of us as a collective consciousness, as a humanity. And it's calling us forth. It's calling us to step into our power, to step into our light, to anchor our beingness into this world, to be anchors of light, to be anchors of love, not broadcasting our wounds on everybody else, projectile vomiting our wounds onto everybody, but on honoring and healing the deep wounds that we all carry, the collective consciousness that we all emerge from. And I think just like, I've said this before, but it's just like a flower emerges from the dark, right? Like that bud rises up through the dark, through the earth, and it makes its way up and it penetrates and comes out through the top of the soil and it reaches up towards the sun. And I think that's the process of spiritual awakening, is that your energy system is wanting to rise and open up through the unconscious, through the shadow, through the darkness, And as we start to embrace that journey instead of fighting that journey, we start to move, we start to break ground a lot quicker. We start to find the light a lot easier. And you start to experience more of the good vibrations. Let's just say that, Yeah. Well, that's our talk for tonight. I hope you can take something away from it. If you're tuning in later, please check out my courses, workshops, sessions. I'll put a link in with the video. I'm going to post one here as well for the Zoom people. I'm going to stop recording, but if you're watching, please stay on and I'll answer any questions that you might have.